Hey guys, Ogalbina here, bringing you guys a pretty cool, different type of video today with Gen 8 like right on the horizon within the next week or so, 2 weeks, depending on when this goes up and all that stuff. Now is a better time than any to kind of get your foot in the draft league community and stuff like that if you haven't done so already and you're interested in doing so. So I figured today we'd make a video kind of on the introduction to draft league if you're new, if you haven't played it before, how to get into it, the basic premise behind it, and the basic ideas in order to kind of gain an understanding on it. But I'm not alone because this is a pretty deep and heavy topic when it comes to mod stuff like that. So I'm joined by my buddy John. You want to say hi?
Yeah, I was thinking about doing my intro, but that's overdone. Honestly, I gotta get a new one. I'm just kidding. Hey
But
guys,
yeah.
John Jr. here.
Oh,
Bringing
he's
you
still
guys
there.
another video. This time this is my video now.
Oh, understandable. We're just gonna upload it to John's. We'll cut out my intro. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, cut out something because you gotta actually edit this.
Oh no, please God, no. But yeah, we're gonna basically just be talking about the introduction to draft league and stuff like that. We should have stuff popping up on the screen because we're gonna try and edit a video for the first time. So we'll see how that
I'm
goes.
not gonna try to edit this video.
We'll see how that goes. But yeah, again, this is just gonna be an intro to the draft league format. So if this is something like if you've been playing draft for a good while now, this might not be the most informational to you. You might not be hearing the most new things in the world. But who knows, maybe there's something that you just completely forgot about, you need a refresher on something like that. This is the video for you. Or if, you haven't played in much draft and you want to kind of pick up on those basics and stuff like that from two people who've been playing draft for a good majority of Gen 7. At least I've been playing for a majority. I think John's been playing longer than me. But
I played I like leaked over a little bit, like towards the end of Gen 6 into Gen 7. No Wi-Fi leaks in Gen 6 though. But also, just to make Ogalbina do a little bit more, there will be timestamps in the description below for what we talk about and when we talk about it.
Oh yeah, so if you want to skip to something in particular, something you have more questions on, stuff like that, you can definitely do so. But yeah, I guess we should start off with what is draft and or what is the draft format and stuff like that. The draft format is basically it's a competitive Pokemon format, obviously, in which a coach drafts a host of Pokemon to be on their team. Kind of think of it as fantasy football plus Pokemon. That's kind of what got me into it, what really interested me about it, because I love, I'm a big sports guy. I love playing fantasy football every year, and then I love Pokemon. So this is a pretty good hybrid between the two. And usually teams are drafted, obviously, in a tiered-based system. The standard tier-based system usually includes one Tier 1 Pokemon, which is going to be your, big dog, Tier 1, top
Alpha
OU
male.
Pokemon. Yeah, alpha, no betas here. And then
No
you're,
betas.
next up, you're going to have one Tier 2, two Tier 3s, a Tier 4, a Tier 5, one Mega, pre-Generation 8, or if you're playing in a Showdown League in Gen 8, depending on their form, but we'll get more into that later. And then 4 free picks allocated by free points. And if you wanted to let us know about how exactly the free points are going to be allocated and what tiers and stuff like that, you want to jump on there, John, for us?
Oh yeah, I thought you were talking to them. I was laughing.
No, yeah, yeah, interaction.
They can't talk to you.
At the yeah.
But there are a bunch of different ways that points work in this type of format. But basically, the standard way is that you have 400 free points. Tier 1s cost 180, Tier 2s 120, 3s 100, 4s 60, and 5s 40, but it doesn't end solely on that. When you get a Mega Pokemon or something like that, you can add or subtract free points. And even some drafts do Z crystals cost certain points. That's not really the standard. Most are if you get a Tier 1 Mega, it's 0 points. Tier 2 is plus 20 or 40. Tier 3 is plus 40 or 60. And then Tier 4 is usually 60 or 80. Just depends on what draft you're in. So you can have a total of up to 480 points, usually in a standard draft. And you can use some pretty busted teams with that.
Oh yeah. And keep in mind too, this is also more so a summary of how it was in Gen 7. It'll likely be very, very similar, especially in Showdown Leagues in Gen 8. However, just probably, a few changes and stuff like that, depending on the league and the rules, whether or not they're going to be allowing Megas in a full National Dex, all Pokemon allowed type league, or if they're going straight Galar, which, if you didn't know, doesn't have Megas and doesn't have Z Crystals and stuff like that. So it might be a little bit different of a format depending on that.
Mega, no.
Yeah, it's gone. Snapped away. But yeah, so it kind of depends on that, but I'm sure if you just read the rules and ask around, it shouldn't be too hard to figure out how the draft goes, as long as you have this as a basis in the back of your mind, this is how it works. But there aren't only tier-based draft, there are also points-based drafts, which allow for a lot more flexibility. Instead of just having your Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5, all Pokemon have an individual point value. Some of them have the same. but usually you have just a set amount of points you can reach. So it'll be like 120, 110, 125 or something like that. And that's the max amount of points you can get. You'll usually get 9 to 12 Pokemon, something like that. And you're not necessarily like forced to grab a super low tier mon or super only a couple high tier mons. You can make your team completely end heavy. You can make it to where you have an incredibly balanced team with a lot of middle tiered mons if that's your style, which it in turn leads to much less restricted teams and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, something I'd like to add on to that actually. If you're more of a beginner player, which obviously if you're watching this, you either are brushing up on some stuff or you are a beginner player. If you're doing that point-based draft, I highly recommend that you go for balance team, more like kind of stick to the guidelines of the tier draft where you get like a super good Pokemon and then some lesser mons to kind of back it up, because you want your team to be able to adapt on the fly to other teams. It's the whole point of draft league format. You want your team to be able to do good against other teams, and if you have a very top heavy team, odds are that your 3 really good Pokemon aren't going to do good every single week and aren't going to be able to carry the matchup. Whereas if you have one super good Pokemon and you have like 5, 6, 7 filler mons, it's like, okay, well now I have something to work with. I have something to play around with.
Oh yeah, 100%. And kind of build
like for instance.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. I got an example. Like for instance, in the one draft, point-based draft I did, it was UPBA. I had Kyron Black and McNancy. And, I got some good filler mons such as Frogadier and Delmise that do really good against some teams in particular.
that video just suddenly got deleted from my channel the moment before this video went live. That's crazy. Damn, we didn't have to do that. That's terrible.
I absolutely had to do you dirty on your own channel.
Yikes. But speaking of battles and stuff like that, that's the whole point of this. You're not just drafting a team to like see how it looks on paper. You're going to be playing other coaches each week with a team that you built and a team that they specifically built to beat one another and counter your opponent's team. You're basically counter teaming your opponent, trying to figure out what they're going to bring and try and make it to where you can beat said 6 Pokemon. But we'll get a lot more in depth into that later once we talk about building and prepping and stuff like that. But yeah, the main goal is to basically win as many weeks as you can, so you can hopefully make it into playoffs, where you should try and win. That is the goal. Don't throw, please. But where you're gonna just try and contend for the championship if you do make playoffs and stuff like that, just to mostly take home bragging rights and stuff like that. Get a few ships under your belt and be able to tell everybody how you're really good and you don't lose unless it's to hacks and stuff like that. Because this is.
Or if you're like me in Obunga, you can keep a sheet with all of your stats.
Ooh, that's the funnest
bask
part.
in your glory if you win.
Yeah, until you lose that sheet and it's just gone for. Oh gosh. But yeah, do you wanna get into the next big category? Because I think that's mostly everything we have when it comes to drafting.
Yeah, let's do it. So the next point that we're going to be making is going to be how to find a draft league to play in. And there are a lot of different ways and different draft leagues that you can participate in. Back in the day, one of the main ways was through the NBA fan website. I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but the main way that we're going to be talking about today is going to be the APA Discord server. And we're kind of a little bit biased when it comes to this. But as far as starting leagues go, APA, for those of you that don't know it, American Pokemon Association, is an amazing place to start. And we're not talking particularly about the Wi-Fi division that has, A-Drive and Wolfie and other big names like John Jr.
Oh, big fan.
But we're talking about the Showdown League, and the Showdown branch has a lot of different things because Panther decides to make a new league every 2 weeks, and it has things like Little Cup, it has like Tier 3 and below, it has Main, Ascension, Odyssey, like there's a bunch of different things that you can participate and join, and it's always looking for new faces. So if you guys want to, there will be a link down in the description below to where you guys can get connected with me and Ogalbina here and other players like Diet Tight and Panther, obviously the commissioner, and we can get you into hopefully a league come Gen 8, and you guys can try to start from there. We have, the starter leagues, things like that, and a lot of people that are very, very helpful that will help you if you ask them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And not only APA, there's a couple other servers that we'd like to mention. There's the NCP server, which is ran by good old John Jr. here. Is another good place to start, a good place to get friends. What now?
Don't forget Zombie.
Oh, and Zombie. My bad. But NCP's a good place to start. They have their Showdown League, their Wi-Fi League, and stuff like that. But they also are running a lot of speed tours, which is really cool. Because I think that's a really good way to get better, in all honesty. Because it's not the commitment of a full draft league, a full 12 weeks or so, plus playoffs potentially if you make them. It's more so you draft a team in the night and you play a couple games with it. It's a good way to get a lot of games under your belt. without necessarily having to, dedicate a couple months just to get better. So I think doing tours and stuff like that, especially ones that aren't as, high stress as like the ones that have like hundreds of people and stuff in them, just, fun little speed tours is definitely a great idea. And then another league that I actually help run called the UPO. We recently kind of expanded the server a little bit, and we're going to be having a little bit of a lower division league for newcomers, people who are looking to brush up on their skill and stuff like that. And I'll definitely be leaving an application and a server link to that in the description below if you want to apply to that and try and get your foot in the door there. And in all these servers, there's definitely going to be plenty of people who would be willing to help you out. And if you have any questions, definitely me and John, I know that for a fact, would be able to, kind of steer you in the right direction and stuff like that. And another really good way of getting into leagues, it's not really a good way, this is kind of the best way, is once you find your first initial league, it becomes so much easier to really just go head first into the draft league community, because when you do start playing a league, you're going to be meeting a lot of new people. They're going to have other leagues that they're a part of that are going to need replacement coaches because someone had to drop out, or they're going to have a new league that's starting up or something like that, and they're like, hey, this is my buddy from this league, let's get him in here. So it's more so about making those connections once you do get into that first league, and being social and talking to those people and stuff like that and making those connections is honestly the best way. I remember my first league, it took me like a month to find a league because I had to use the old GBA website and stuff like that, and a lot of it was pretty much obsolete by the time I got into draft even. So it took me a long time to find one that was actually active. I got in, and within a month of being in there, I was in 2 other leagues after that because I had a buddy refer me to 2 other ones, and then from there I met new people and I got into another one. Don't join too many at the same time because that's always a bad idea. That's something that I've done. I've been in I think my max is I think I've been in 10 leagues at the same time, and that's not a good idea, especially if you have a life outside of Pokemon, which I hope so. But yeah,
I was in 9 leagues at once, and I had depression.
Yeah,
my junior.
Oh God, I couldn't. It's terrible.
Another thing to run off the best way of finding new leagues, having friends. That is such a big thing. I cannot stress that enough. I know a lot of us, we're introverts. We play Pokemon, and we don't enjoy talking to people. But online, it's like a different environment. If you don't enjoy talking to people face to face, I completely understand, but I highly recommend that you try reaching out and making connections in the community, because everybody starts somewhere, man. Everybody starts as a no-name, or everybody starts as a little underling kind of, and once you start reaching out and finding new friends, you never know what you can find. For instance, in my first ever Wi-Fi league I joined, it was called PMU. It's on my channel, and I didn't know what I was getting into, but I started reaching out, I started talking to people in that league, and now a lot of those people are some of my greatest friends, and I've made some really, really strong connections and bonds through that. And you never know what you can do when you reach out and talk to people. You never know who's going to be a really, really good friend for life, or who can help you get in other leagues, who can help you get better at leagues. There's a whole lot of different people out there. You just have to put yourself out there and be willing to talk to other people.
Oh yeah, 100%. And on top of that, there isn't just, one type of specific league. There is, Showdown leagues and Wi-Fi leagues. Showdown being games that are played on the Pokemon Showdown server, like one of the side servers and stuff like that. And then games that are played on console themselves. Depending on what your interests are and what you really want to get into, both are fine. But you don't need the Switch or the games to play in a Showdown league, which is cool. So this is accessible to anybody, even if you don't have Sword and Shield or something like that when it comes out, or if this comes out a little bit before, in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you don't have to worry about, having those games to play competitive Pokemon. It's really easily accessible for a lot of people. You just, like John said, have to kind of throw yourself out there and get ready to go and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. And don't pressure yourself to go into Wi-Fi leagues either, because that's something that a lot of people do. They're like, oh, well, I have to get into these Wi-Fi leagues because all these other big YouTubers are in it. I wanna be like them. Do not feel like you have to pressure yourself to do that. I did Showdown leagues for a year and a half before I ever even tried Wi-Fi. And it's a good thing because you learn what you like, and you get kind of experience before you jump into Wi-Fi. Granted, it's a completely different game going from Showdown to Wi-Fi, and you definitely have to get adjusted still, but having that common knowledge and that common ground going from Showdown to Wi-Fi is something that I highly recommend.
Oh yeah, and it's much less time consuming as well. I love Wi-Fi much more than I honestly like Showdown, but Showdown leagues are much less time consuming, especially like John said, if you're just now learning the game, and especially if you're new to competitive mons. I think Showdown leagues are definitely the way to go. To kind of just get your foot in the door and get your feet
wet. Showdown leagues are the way to go.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out Zombie. But yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, I think we should just jump on to the common knowledge kind of section of the video.
Okay, you want to kick it off? You want me to?
I got it. I got it. In the draft community, there's certain lingo and stuff like that I feel like you probably should be aware of, just so when people kind of try and communicate with you and try and get games scheduled and try and get games done and stuff like that, so you know exactly what they're talking about. Some stuff like seeing DF, someone say like are we gonna play on like DF? That's something that you'd commonly hear pretty often in the draft league community. It stands for Draft Frontier. Which we'll link down in the description below. It's basically just a Pokemon Showdown server, like a side server that has a Draft League specific tier for the draft format and stuff like that, which makes it a little bit easier. Also has a Wi-Fi Draft League tier in order to so you can build easier for Draft League matches in that tier, so you know what's legal, what's not in draft and stuff like that, and it just leaves less room for error and stuff like that, which is nice. So a lot of people are going to talk like that, so you should probably understand what exactly they mean when they're saying that. And similar to this, there's also another server called Sports, which I'll also link down in the description below. They're both used. They're both incredibly similar. There's not too much of a difference. Just some people play on one, some people play on another, or specific leagues play on one, others play on another, which, is, again, pretty good common knowledge to know.
Absolutely. I didn't know. Fun fact, I didn't know what DF meant for like the first month of me playing League. So whenever someone said DF, I was like, what are you talking about? And nobody would tell me for like the first month. But once I found out, I don't know.
It makes things a lot easier. It makes you look like you know what you're doing a little bit more too, which is always nice.
Yeah, and whenever people would bring it up, I'd always be like, what's the difference? And nobody would ever tell me. The difference, let me tell you guys right now, the difference is that it has more specific, like, common league rules. Like, it allows baton pass, I believe.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But it keeps sleep clause. I think there's things like that. It just has common league rules on it.
Yeah. And it's not going to, auto ban you if you have, like, a specific Uber that's, allowed in, in draft and stuff like that. That wouldn't be allowed in the OU tier. It doesn't make things, like, weird, or you have to, like, oh, we have to challenge on this tier because I'm bringing this mon. It leaves, less room for, shifty stuff to happen at the very least. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And as far as moving forward into the Gen 8 goes, there will be two different types of metagames that you guys definitely need to be aware of. And this goes for everybody, but there will be the Galar decks and the National decks. And basically the difference between these two comes down to Showdown to Wi-Fi. But not every is good. It's like not all fingers are thumbs, but all thumbs are fingers, basically. Not all Showdown leagues are going to be Galar decks, but all Wi-Fi leagues are. And basically, every time you join a Wi-Fi league, obviously sort of Galar decks. If you didn't know that, I'm so sorry that I spoiled that for you. But if you're on Showdown, there will be the option of using only the Galar decks or the National decks. Obviously, it's going to be up to the league owner and what they want to do. So if you're looking more to use Megas, such as Mega Adno, the greatest Pokemon to ever grace our great green Earth, you want to do a Showdown league. But if you want to just try the new Pokemon, try them out, have a little bit of fun with them, and obviously, just be on Wi-Fi, then you're going to want to be on the Switch and you want to be in a Wi-Fi league. And make sure that you know which one of these that you're getting into when you first get into a league, because you don't want to sign up for what you think is a Showdown league and just a small commitment, and then you are in a huge Wi-Fi league, and then it's going to take up so much more time.
Oh yeah, 100%. And again, that's also a big deal if like you're going into a league and you specifically want to use Mega Charizard X, because Charizard's your favorite Pokemon. Mega Charizard X looks super cool. Make sure you're playing in a Showdown league that is saying it explicitly allows Megas and stuff like that, or there will be Megas be able to be drafted and stuff like that, just so you don't go into a league and then you're sorely disappointed at the very end because of that.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. And another thing to make sure, if you are joining those Wi-Fi leagues, make sure you build your teams at level 50. Most likely, it could change in Sword and Shield, but at least in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and prior, when you play on Wi-Fi 6v6, usually the Pokemon are auto set to level 50, and that can change in certain damage rolls and stuff like that, and certain like speeds and stuff like that. Depending on which mon you're using. So it's just smarter to build at level 50 in the damage calculator, which can be a little bit more tedious because you have to change it manually. But once you do it once or twice, you end up doing it like as muscle memory. I'll be prepping for Showdown leagues, or I'll be playing in a Showdown league game, and I'll automatically change them onto level 50, and then I'll be like, wait a minute, wrong one. Yeah. So it's honestly just something you get used to over time.
I'll make a live team for Ogalbina, and then half the team.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, again, it becomes like muscle memory to do it if you play in enough Wi-Fi leagues.
I automatically set point, like no matter what. It's just like you get used to it. You get super used to it, especially if you do Wi-Fi more than draft league. But the next big question is probably gonna be, how do I become better at draft league? I understand the entire process of draft league is, now how do I become good at it? And it's a learning process. That's what it is. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to get experience. That's like the main thing. The more leagues you do, the more experience you have, obviously. But with that being said, whenever somebody told me this, I took it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do 15 leagues at once. I'm gonna have so much stinking experience. I'm gonna be so good. Don't do that. That is not good. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but going into more leagues than you can commit time to is not good for yourself. Going into like 15 leagues and then 5 minute prepping, that's not good. You want to go into, I don't know, 2, 3 leagues at a time, tops maybe, and you want to really focus on prepping and making yourself better. What can you do? What can you bring? Things like that in order to make yourself better. Because if you just do like all those leagues and then you just 5 minute prep and you just keep battling and you keep regurgitating that, it's like studying for the night before, regurgitating the information and then forgetting it the next day. That's essentially what you're doing. That's like the best real world example that I can give.
Quality over quantity, basically. Quality over quantity. Make sure you're getting the most out of your experience, opposed to just doing it to do it. You won't retain that information. You won't get any better because you're going to be rushing, like John said, and it's just going to be a bad time. And it can get pretty discouraging if you're playing in 15 leagues and you just started and you're losing the majority of the games. It's a little bit less bad, I feel like, losing your first couple league games, stuff like that, if you're playing in 2 leagues, because you're still learning and you can really focus in on why I lost, what improvements I need to make, what changes I need to make, which we'll jump into and stuff like that here in a second. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree. And something else that you definitely need to do when joining leagues, like one of the first things that you definitely need to be aware of is you to challenge yourself. If you are kind of experienced when it comes to Pokemon, but you just don't have experience with the draft league format, maybe you shouldn't join a league that's all brand new people to Pokemon. Maybe you should join a league with other people that have similar experience to you. Because if you face people that have a significantly less skill gap than you, like if they're significantly worse than you, and you know it and you're aware of it, then there's not really any reward from winning. You're facing people that probably aren't having as good of prep as you, probably don't make the proper play all the time, and you're not doing any favors to yourself except feeding yourself wins. That's essentially all you're doing. So if you want to better yourself, you have to go above and beyond to keep seeking out competition.
Oh yeah, it's you won't get better playing the same exact people, the same exact skill level. It's okay to lose. It sucks. I detest losing. I'm one of the biggest, it's hard to take your own advice sometimes, but it's okay to lose because you're gonna learn more from that than you are from beating a player who also just started. If you have a little experience and you beat a player who absolutely doesn't know what they're doing, you don't really get any better by doing so. You're kind of trophy hunting at that point, which again, this is cool to win championships, but it's also better just to become better as your own and win those more meaningful games and those more meaningful
Absolutely.
championships.
And be able to participate with those higher up people and known as one of the better people or as something that is respected thing that you want to do.
Oh yeah. And another really big thing is don't be afraid to experiment, whether that be in your builds or in your drafting. Try new things, try new Pokemon, try new movesets, try different techs and stuff like that, because again, that's how you're going to familiarize yourself with this metagame and how to prep and build and stuff like that. It comes with experimentation. You do this and you're like, I probably shouldn't have done this because it was a bit counterintuitive. It didn't really help me towards my end game. Knowing when to bring spicy and heat stuff and when not to is a big thing, but at the same time you should kind of branch out and at least try it and see what works and what doesn't, just so again for the next time and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And seriously, do not be afraid to experiment with the Pokemon that you use, the items you use, everything, because with me personally, I love using Victini right now. Actually, Victini is one of my top favorite Pokemon. And the thing with Victini is when I first started Draft League, I thought it was awful. I did not like it. I did not ever want to try it. I thought it was a horrible Pokemon. And then one time it was still there when I had like a second round pick, and I was like, well, I know it shouldn't be here still, so I'm going to take it. I'm going to try it. I'm going to see how I like it. And it is now one of my favorite Pokemon because I reached out and tried it. But I also, when I first started using it, I only ran Scarf. There was like no other item that I was
Scarf or Band. Scarf or Band,
absolutely. And then once I started using it more and more, I started diversifying the sets. Well, maybe I'll throw an Expert Belt, maybe a Life Orb, maybe a Z, maybe I'll put a weakness policy on it. Like, you start diversifying the way that you use that Pokemon, and you start becoming really familiar with it, and then you're like, okay, well now I just found one of my stinking favorite Pokemon, and I want to draft every single draft. But and you can't do that unless you reach out and you experiment with things.
Oh yeah, and there's so many Pokemon like that. The one I always think of is one is Victini for sure. That's another Pokemon I really like. But another one is Jirachi. I noticed this a lot too with newer players, and something I did personally in my first ever draft league. I drafted Jirachi. And if you don't know, Jirachi has an ability called Serene Grace, which doubles secondary effects like this to happen. So a lot of the time, you'll see people run Choice Scarf and then Iron Head because you outspeed most things, and then Iron Head with Serene Grace has a 60% chance to flinch, and that can be really really solid in some matchups. It can really clutch up some games. But at the same time, you kind of have to take that at face. People just kind of take that as, this is what Jirachi does. But Jirachi is so much better than that. It's phenomenal mix. It's phenomenal special. It's a great bulky Wish Passer. It's a Stealth Rocker. It has access to Calm Mind. I've brought in Recycle Jirachi, Cosmic Power. It's a great Z user. Like, it's a phenomenal Pokemon outside of just a Scarfroll. As kind of a way to show growth and stuff like that in a player. Like I said, I bought Scarf Jirachi like 9 out of 10 times in my first league. In APA Academy Season 2 recently, I drafted Jirachi. I brought Choice Scarfed 1 time in I think 12 games. So like it was good in that matchup, but you once you get better and you start recognizing and experimenting, you'll realize, hey, this set's probably not the best and most optimal set for me to run this week. I need to branch out, diversify, and kind of see what else I can bring to catch my opponent off guard and see what I can do with it.
Absolutely. And then you'll accidentally find a Pokemon that you really love.
Oh yeah.
It's like, wow, where were you my whole life?
Oh yeah. But yeah, next we should jump into drafting, which is probably I can't say one of the most important because everything's so important in draft, man. I shouldn't even say that. But it is a very, very important part because these are going to be the Pokemon that you're going to be using for the next 10 to 12 weeks, plus potentially playoffs.
It's the foundation of everything.
Yeah. And I can tell you firsthand, if you draft a team you do not enjoy or you draft a team that's not very good, it is going to be a rough season for you. It makes building so much more tedious. It makes playing so much more tedious. This is very, very big. To learn how to draft correctly is a really, really big part. And it makes the game a lot easier to learn, too, if you have the correct pieces to experiment with and stuff like that. But some common things that you're going to see in draft is people are going to draft cores. Cores of Pokemon that either in type or in function, stuff like that, pair really well together and they complement each other really well. And the most notable kind of example of this is going to be a Fairy Dragon Steel Core, or Fragon Steel Core. Fragon. I gotta incorporate Steel in that, but Fairy Dragon Steel Core. It's incredibly important. Probably the most important thing you could draft on a team. I think it is 100% needed. There are other cores that are nice but aren't necessarily needed for you to have a functional team. This is 100% needed. At face value, it doesn't seem like why do you need these specific types, by themselves. If you haven't played draft, you wouldn't really, understand that too well. But these types cover each other so incredibly well, and hit the things that they need to hit super effectively, take hits from things correctly, and they usually have specific roles that they help with for a team. For example, fairy types are imperative against opposing dragon types and stuff like that. They're good, fighting type checks, stuff like that. Usually bulky Wish Passers are a lot of them. Good clerics and stuff like that. Great team support mons. There are some offensive fairies, but mostly you're going to see, fat mons like, Mega Mawile is the best bulky fairy. And it's the best bulky steel. Both. No, we're not going to talk about that. But there's mons like, your token Clefable, your token, Florges and Sylveon and stuff like that are going to be really, really important. Dragon's another phenomenal typing. It's not hit by anything super effectively besides itself, ice, and fairy, and it hits a lot of things really, really hard, which is really nice. They often have really great coverage, can be pretty naturally bulky. There's so many phenomenal dragon types in the format that are usually just top tier 1, tier 2 mons, so it's important to get a good one while you can because they usually put on so much offensive pressure. Your Garchomps, Hydreigons, Kyurem Blacks, and stuff like that. They usually have great coverage. They're going to hit other dragons super effectively, which is nice. And then your steel type. Steel is one of the most important defensive typings in a draft by far. They're often stealth rockers. They check opposing fairy types. They check opposing dragon types, which is also phenomenal. Opposing steel types even. If they don't have ground coverage to hit them, it's obviously really, really nice to have that. Steel is just really, really important to hold together a team with glue and stuff like that. But yeah.
You did really. I'm impressed. So, can we all give a round of applause for that? That was really good. That was really.
I appreciate it. Dang, I'm
leaving with all the garbage types. All right. So, Ball Fairy Dragon Steel is definitely the most important core in draft league. It really is. You need to make sure that you have a solid foundation with that. But there are also other important types, and some of the most important include, obviously, the fire, water, grass core. Fire is a little bit less needed than the other two, but water in specific is a very, very important type. Just because it is such a good bulky defensive type, there's not a lot of Pokemon that can, 2-hit KO, OHKO it, and if they get reliable recovery, it's crazy. But there are a lot of bulky waters such as Suicune, such as Milotic, Aloma Lola, that are really, really good at soaking up hits and then just being a nice defensive role, just taking a hit and being a pivot, something like that. Taking a hit and then you get momentum by switching out and making a double. Taking a hit, getting a Scald Burn. That's
Scald's the most free move in the format. It's the most free move in the format.
One of the best moves, absolutely, in the format. And just having a good bulky water type can really be the glue and can be what makes or breaks your team. Having that type that they can't break. Another good type is ground, and this you learn from experience if you do not draft a ground type how important a ground type is, because when you go to face something like a Jolteon or a Raikou or a Zapdos, they can run specs, or even a Coco, dog. They can run specs on you, they can run Life Orb, they can run whatever they stinking want because you have no way to stop them. You need that electric community to be able to stop the electric types from running rampant, because if you don't have that, your team is going to get just torn to shreds, especially because a lot of dragon types are part flying, and that would otherwise be your electric resist. So you're going to kind of get torn to shreds by those electric types.
And even if you have, really quick, even if you do have that electric resistance, you're still taking that Volt Switch and giving your opponent so much momentum going into whatever they want afterwards. The ground type, again, is so important to stop that momentum to where people don't just, have you in the back foot the entire game, because you're never going to win a game if you don't have any momentum.
Absolutely. And even just discouraging that Volt Switch can be so important.
Oh, yeah.
So important. And then Dark type. Dark type is very, very important. I thought it was not important when I started Draft League, but then I lost to a Necrozma, and never again did I look back. You need a Dark type if you do not want to lose to Psychic types. Psychic types, what they can do if you don't have a Dark type is they can run something like Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Stored Power, Recover, something like that. That's just like an example set, but they can basically just keep setting up in your face, and you can't do anything about it without a Dark type, because they can run Mono Psychic move and just blow back your entire team. And with that Dark type, that forces them to at least have 2 move slots, one of which is a Psychic type move, the other of which is another coverage move, and then maybe they have another setup move in Recovery, but they cannot just go double setup 1 move Recovery, which is very, very important. And the last type, you know what, Ogalbina, you can go ahead and take this type. I know how important this one is to you.
Oh, a grounded poison. John was talking about once you, initially you don't really think of these things when you're first starting drafts, and I know I didn't in my first draft league game, but a grounded poison type is so important, just simply so you do not lose to Toxic Spikes. Toxic Spikes are an entry hazard, if you don't know. If you set them up immediately on switch in any grounded Pokemon that is not a poison type or a steel type, or something, immune to poison, will get poisoned and slowly just start taking chip every single turn, which is terrible to play around. And grounded poison types in particular are great because they actually absorb those Toxic Spikes to where you don't have to waste a turn clicking Defog or Rapid Spin, letting something get poisoned or hit really hard, losing momentum. And it also just deters the thought of bringing Toxic Spikes. For example, one of my favorite Pokemon in the game is Nidoqueen, and I think that's kind of the perfect example. If I ever face a Nidoqueen or something like that, I'm not bringing Toxic Spikes because it's such a fat, bulky mon. It can always pivot in once, take the Toxic Spikes or something like that, get up its own rocks and be fine. So it really does deter your opponent from bringing that and just really having their way with you. In my first drafted game ever, I didn't have a grounded poison, and I didn't really understand the concept of removal very well. This was, again, really early Sun and Moon, so don't make fun of me too hard here. I'll probably throw it up on the screen or something like that. But I got stacked by a fortress, and it was a pretty ugly game. I was pretty out of it the entire game. There was no way to really stop it because my team was just getting so chipped down due to having double layers of T-Spikes up and having nothing that was actually immune to the T-Spikes on my team. So again, that's really, really, really important to make sure you have. Another really, really important thing, just a few more things I want to touch on in this little section, is having some sort of ground immunity. There are a lot of really, really scary ground types in the format that just click Earthquake and claim a kill most of the time. So having something that can switch in and not take any damage from that at all, even whether it be a flying type itself or a Pokemon with the ability to levitate or something like that, is really nice. So that Scarf Garchomp doesn't just win against you late game, or Sandrush Excadrill doesn't just win against you end game.
Scarf Garchomp, that's the only mon in the format.
Scarfy, those are the only 2 ground types at all. So, I mean, if they're not in Gen 8, then we're good. But no, we should...
too early, dog.
I don't think Garchomp's actually confirmed yet, which is pretty crazy. I think Garchomp would be terrifying in Gen 8.
Austin because of it. Garchomp the God.
Oh, man, that's terrible. But I think that's really important. And then there are always, a bunch of other little rules that I think are better for you to kind of figure out on your own as you're playing. There's so many, facets that come into drafting a team. And, if I sit here and explain all of them, it'll take up the entire video and we'll be here for a couple hours. But, like there's stuff like having a bulky psychic is really nice and stuff like that, just to check fighting types and just kind of realizing what your team's weak to. And patching that up as you go is really, really important. And again,
That's
you'll
probably
learn.
the most important thing, to be honest.
Yeah, you'll learn
Sure
as you
your
play.
team's not weak to one specific thing.
Yeah, you'll learn as you go. You'll play in your first draft league, and you might have a pretty decent team, but then you get in and you see, wow, Mega Metachamp 6-0'd me. Next time I draft, I'm gonna make sure that Mega Metachamp does not 6-0 me again, and you again learn from there. And again, the draft is just 100% a learning experience. You got to kind of play and get the experience. You're not gonna jump in and you're not gonna be like a top 10 player in draft the first league you do. You're probably gonna
Absolutely.
go 500 at best, which is completely fine because it makes those wins so much more valuable, and it makes that season where you finally do go 8-4, make playoffs and make it to finals and stuff like that, it makes it matter all that much more, which can be obviously really, really cool.
Absolutely agree. And another thing when it comes to drafting, like we've talked only about types, so more when it comes to. But one of the most important things is speed tiers, and a lot of new players don't really understand what speed tiers are. And I'm gonna do my best to explain what it is. But we were talking about this earlier. It's really difficult to explain. But basically, you want to draft Pokemon as to not let certain Pokemon run adamant or modest. For example, if I have a team where every single Pokemon is under base 85 speed, then base 100 speed Pokemon are going to be able to run adamant or modest depending on if they're a physical or special attacker, and still speed tie, or it might be outspeed by 1, those Pokemon that are base 85. So you want to essentially think, okay, well, I don't want to let this Pokemon run rampant, run adamant, or run modest. So you want to you want to get another base 100, you want to get a 95. So you have to think about that. You have to think, okay, I don't want this base 130. I don't want Tapu Koko to run modest against me. So what can I do to patch that up? And then you can get like a base 120 mod, a base 125, a speed tie, a base 130 mod as well, and kind of go from there.
Oh yeah. Definitely a really, really important thing. It doesn't seem like, again, it's something you don't really think about when you initially start playing, but it's something that makes a world of difference when it comes to prep and building.
Oh, absolutely. Especially, there are some times where you'll face an opponent. Like, for instance, I faced somebody in EWT weeks ago. I don't remember who it was, but their speed tiers went from base 105 to base 80, and I have Charizard X. So because Charizard X hits base 100, I was able to run adamant fat Charizard because I had so many extra EVs after we sped crept, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit. But because their speed tiers were really, really bad as far as battle went, my Charizard could just run adamant with 0 cares in the.
Yeah, and again, there's a big difference between playing against a Jolly Mega Charizard X and an Adamant Mega Charizard X. There is a ginormous difference. And it can really, again, make the difference between you getting O-code by something or living a hit on 2 and being able to retaliate and knock it out, or being able to, all that kind of stuff, which is pretty important.
Things are a lot stronger when they are modest or adamant. You guys, you will find that out.
Oh yeah, it makes a world of difference. But speaking of that, I think that's like a perfect segue into our next category, which is going to be prepping / team building, which is my personal favorite part about the draft league format. Like I said earlier, what you're going to be doing each week is you're going to be building your own specific team that is tailor-made built to beat your opponent's team. So you're basically going to be counter-teaming them and stuff like that, which is so much fun because there's so many possibilities in Pokemon when it comes to movesets and items and EVs and all that stuff, and potential ideas and stuff like that to potentially catch your opponent off guard and win a game with some crazy stuff. So this is kind of the main allure of the draft league for me, being able to.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
And honestly, I think that building is equally as important to battling ability. Especially when
more important.
Especially when you're playing against good players. It's very difficult to win a game with a subpar team, a team that doesn't have a correct, a correct structure and stuff like that to it and all that stuff. I think that's incredibly important. There's certain things you want to take into account when building and stuff like that. And do you want to kind of jump into the first idea of that, John?
When you first start building a team, the first thing you should do is sit your 9 to 12 Pokemon and their 9 to 12 Pokemon up beside each other. And the first thing that you should know is how your opponent is going to beat you. And you should counter build for that, whether that be building an offensive win con or a defensive way to counter what they have. And speaking of win cons, one of the most important things when prepping is having a way to win. And you will learn this as time goes on. Too many people just bring 6 Pokemon that do it the best on the matchup, and while that's a fine strategy, and obviously it'll win you a couple games here, it will not win you as many games as having an actual win con. I can give you guys an anecdote about this actually, because when I first started Draft League, I was pretty consistent. I was about a five. I was maybe a 600 player. Like I was pretty consistent, just bringing the first 6 Pokemon that I thought I did really really well. But then once I made a transition into, okay, I understand how to play the game now. I understand how this works. I know that this Pokemon is how I win, and once I get in the game, I need to position everything to try to get this Pokemon to win. Then my win rate jumped exponentially, and you have to also be able to realize you don't have just one win con. You will always have several ways to win the game, or at least you should. If you build a proper team, you should have several outs to win a game. It shouldn't just be, okay, I have to click Spikes on this Pokemon, then I have to let it die, then I have to click Stealth Rock on this Pokemon, then let it die, and then my last Pokemon will win the game. And it can be like, well, maybe my Scarfer can win, maybe my offensive threat can win that can set up, maybe my defensive Reuniclus or something can win. Like, you have to have several ways to win the game, and it's very, very important to have a backup plan. Like, if something doesn't go right, you can't just be, okay, well, I lose no matter what. He got rocks on the field and I don't have rapid spin. Well, there goes my entire game plan. You have to have a way out if, things start getting tough for you. And you should take note that of what you think your opponent is going to bring. Like I said earlier, I think that's very, very important. Don't only build for what you think they're going to bring, though. That is a mistake. Build for... It's difficult to say that, because obviously you want to build for what you think they're going to bring. Don't discredit any Pokemon, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Build for everything, everything, but identify what's best versus you, and identify how you are going to stop that from beating you, essentially. So give everything the respect. Yeah, identify it and give it respect. Another thing I want to touch on really quick when it comes to win cons and stuff like that is not only identifying your win con and like having a backup win con and stuff like that, is also identifying how exactly you put that Pokemon in a position to win. Like, say my win con, absolutely, I'm playing a game and this dude has no fairy resist and I have a Mega Diancie. Well, he has a fairy resist in Jirachi, but everything else just drops to +2 Diancie after rocks. But I need to make sure I, one, scout out the Jirachi, see what set it is, and if it's like Shuka, Spadef, I need to make sure I pop Shuka. I need to make sure or that I put it in range of Earth Power or something like that. So you have to kind of build and facilitate a team that puts your Diancie in a position to win. You can't just kind of hope, like, this is what I need to win, and if it happens like this, then good. This is what I need to win with, and that's it. You have to build a team that supports that win con. You can't just, go in expecting it to just raw win. There's very few Pokemon that are just going to win on matchup. Like, there's very few matchups where Pokemon's just going to auto-win. You're going to need, regardless of how good it is versus your opponent, you're going to need to get chip on certain things. You're going to need to eliminate a certain Pokemon first in order for that win con to really work out in the way that it should. So I feel like that's really, really important in identifying that.
Absolutely. And there are several ways you can do that. You can have things to, take hits from the things that your win con doesn't want to take. You can have things to set up spikes, set up hazards.
Lures.
Win con to do a little bit extra damage. Go ahead.
Or like lures, like berries. There are certain type resistance berries. If there's a Pokemon of yours that gets hit super effectively by a move, there's usually a berry that you can hold to reduce that damage, and you can get this sufficient chip off on the Pokemon that attacked you, which can in turn help your other Pokemon in the back. Like, say you have a Pokemon that's weak to Steel. What am I thinking? Dude, I can't even think of an example right now. So you have Kyurem Black. You have Kyurem Black plus Mega Diancie.
Sure.
And they have their Jirachi out, and Spadef Jirachi is a pretty good check to cure him as well. But say you run Babiri Berry, which is the steel type reduced berry, and he brings in his Jirachi to potentially try and check your cure him and stuff like that. He's probably going to be Shuka because it's best for the matchup. He's going to click Iron Head to hit you hard. You can eat up that hit and then hit him back with an Earth Power, provided you don't get flinched, and then you pop that Shuka for your Diancie. Yeah, so I figured because that's a pretty common core that I've seen a lot of people draft. It's a pretty gross core. So those two mons can potentially beat down each other's checks. Another really, really, really important part about building is another pretty complex idea that I'm gonna try and talk about right here, and it's something called speed creeping. I believe we touched on it earlier and stuff like that. But speed creeping, it's essentially is going to be the idea of in Pokemon, all Pokemon are going to have different speed stats. Some are going to be faster than others and stuff like that, which means that when you're building for your opponent's team, you don't necessarily need to run max speed. in your Pokemon to outspeed the opponent's Pokemon, which will allow you to save a couple little extra EVs to where you can throw that in another stat, which can help you potentially live a certain hit from a certain Pokemon, or hit harder if you're like a mixed attacker or something like that. I'm going to give kind of an example for context, and hopefully I throw it up on the screen. I'm going to try and kind of show an example of this so you can kind of see it in action. But let's say you're building for a game and your opponent's fastest Pokemon is Raikou, which has a base 115 speed. And if you give it max speed with a timid nature, the max speed Raikou can hit is 361 if you're playing at level 100. You have a Greninja on your team, which you obviously want it to outspeed, because if it's chipped and you put in range with like a Hydro Pump or something like that, you can knock it out if you're faster than it. And you have a base speed of 122, so you will be able to outspeed it at max speed, obviously, because you have a faster base speed set. And you hit a max speed of 377 with max investment in timid nature. Obviously, you outspeed it by a fair amount, so you don't need to put max speed to outspeed that Raikou. So you can save EVs in your speed by just giving yourself enough speed to outspeed the Raikou by 1 point, aka hitting 362 speed, which is obviously really nice because this saves you I believe this lets you need 200 speed EVs to go and outspeed that with a timid nature, giving you an extra 52 EVs to put anywhere else. So if you're a mixed Greninja, you can throw that in your attack. Or if you want to live a certain priority hit, you can throw that in your defense or Spadef or HP or anything like that. I only bring this up because I think speed creeping correctly is something that really, really separates more experienced and inexperienced Draft League players. It doesn't seem like a big deal at surface level and on paper that 52 extra EVs on a pretty frail Mon really might not seem like a big deal, but it can really be a crucial thing in allowing you to live an extra hit or knock something out with an extra move or something like that. So I really think that's something important that you have to kind of get a grasp on early on, despite it being a little complicated at first when you're first learning how to do it.
Absolutely, especially because a lot of times, at least when I build, it's like, okay, well, my Pokemon can 2-hit KO this Pokemon. But sometimes whenever they do that, people might not take account, okay, well, they'll be speed creepy, so they'll have this much HP. So you might have just enough HP to take 2 hits from whatever it is that they're trying to hit you with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, or you can live that hit after rocks now, and then retaliate. Like, if you're a frail Mon, you're going to hit hard, but if you live that hit after rocks, just because that little extra bulk, that can honestly save you games, and it's definitely saved me games multiple times.
Definitely saved me games. I've had Mons live on too, absolutely. But there's a lot more that when it comes to prepping as far as, speed creeping and aggressively speed creeping, and things like that goes, but I don't think we're going to touch on that here today, because it goes really, really in depth. In depth? Depth? That's the word. Depth. Thanks, John. But, so that's going to be all that we have for prepping for you guys today. And we're going to go ahead and move on into battling. Battling is, it's the meat of the Draft League. It's like what everybody really wants to do. It's like why you are playing the game. You want to battle. And it's very similar to competitive Pokemon battling standard. That's like OU, UU, things like that, obviously. Except for you have your specific team to face their specific team that you both built for each other's specific team of Pokemon. And as noted in the team builder portion of the video, you should have a team specifically built to beat your opponents, like the entire way we talked about how you prep and like the team that you made throughout that, and the same goes for them. And this gives you the ability to have a much more, good game plan, like we were just talking about. But how do I win? Well, here's my win con. I got to get spikes up, I got to get rocks up, and I got to chip this Mon this much. You have to keep that in mind when you are playing, and that is something that is actually very, very difficult to keep in mind when you are playing, at least when you're first starting. Sometimes, at least for me, what helps me to do that stuff is to write down what your win count is. Write down what you have to accomplish. Write down, well, I have to, break this Pokemon. I should probably get spikes up, and I need to make sure that this Pokemon goes down. And then my Mega Niantic, my Kyurem Black, my win con will win the game. And that is very, very important. And do not be afraid to write anything.
Oh yeah, 100%. And another really, really important thing that we should talk about is another thing I'll link down in the description below. It's going to be your best friend, which is going to be the Pokemon calculator, the calculator and stuff like that, which allows you to plug in your own specific sets and see how much damage your opponent is doing to you and how much you're doing to them. This is crucial information for when you're playing. Sometimes it can tip you off if they're timid, if they're modest, if they're aggressively creeping, how much HP, defense they're running, all that stuff. It's incredibly, incredibly important just so you know for later in the game how bulky this is, how frail it is, how much investment this has in attack, which is really, really important. And, facilitating your win con and getting it into the right position. You have to know these things. Like I said earlier, if I'm playing against an opponent and their only Diancie check is a Spadef Rachi, but they end up bringing like offensive Calm Mind or something like that, no Shuka, they're like, I don't know, something random like a Life Orb. Life Orb Jirachi is never a set usually, but say they're like Life Orb or something like that. That makes my Diancie much easier to win with, and I can just chip it down under range of Earth Power, for a less bulky Rachi and potentially still win the game right there. So again, that's really, really important, is using the calculator. It is 100% your best friend. It's in prep and in play. Knowing your calcs and stuff like that is really going to win or lose you games. Yeah, you're not going to be very successful in this if you aren't looking at, the specific calcs and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And that's something that's like very, very important. Just making sure you can get somewhat of a basis of what their set is, because it's very different playing against a 252 modest Clefable than a 252 HP, 252 bold Clefable, which is 252 defense investment is what I'm referring to. It's very different switching into those Pokemon and doing all those things like that, and it really interprets how you play. It's like, okay, well, can I switch this Pokemon in on this? No, I can't. Well, what's my game plan now? Do I need to break this in order for my other Pokemon, my win con, to win the game? No? Okay, awesome. Well, maybe my win con can win right now. And that's just something you always have to keep in the back of your mind. And writing other things down helps too, like what moves they have. And if you're Tony, if you're like a timer stall person, maybe write down how many of each move. That if they're toxic, burned, etc.
This is more so for Wi-Fi, by the way, because Showdown will actually show you this information and stuff like that. Obviously, you can't timer stall in Showdown, but if you do need to know, like, hey, I need to stall them out of a certain amount of moves. Like, I need to, like, sometimes games just get really long, and some Pokemon are really bulky, and you need to stall them out of their recovers or like their slack offs or their attacking moves and stuff like that. Like, stalling Clefable out of softballs is definitely something that happens. It's happened to me in a few games, 100% of the time. And if it's on Wi-Fi, you have to write down, like, it has this many, softballs left, and then write down, like, a tick every time it uses one. Just so you know, if you're playing on Wi-Fi. On Showdown, it'll show you, it'll say, like, 11 out of, what, I think softballs 16 or something like that, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, it'll that's, again, really, really important information to know. But yeah, don't be a Brody. Shout out to Bob. But yeah, another really, really important thing, though, just as kind of just a summary, not only to battling, to building and stuff like that, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are plenty of people in this community that have been playing this game for a long, long time and have this stuff down pretty down pat. And there's a lot of people who are really willing to help you, especially in places like we talked about, like the APA server, the NCP server and stuff like that. You're going to have a lot of people who would definitely be willing to help you out and, kind of help you figure out this game and stuff like that and get better at it, because the basis, we want more people to play draft. We want to keep this this community and this stuff like that as live and popping as humanly possible. So the more people we can get into play this game, the better. The more leagues there are, the better. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Essentially,
don't be a Brody again.
Don't be a Brody again.
And there are lots of people. Like, I know me and Owen here are definitely always willing to help. I know if you hop into Zombie, I'm sure he's willing to help you.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
He'll probably ask to join your league after. He'll probably ask to join your league after. Be like, hey, you got any spots, bro?
Absolutely. Zombie is the biggest league whore, but shout out to Zombie. But there are so many people, if you aren't sure on something, if you need a specific set, if you need like, hey, I like this Pokemon for this game, but I don't know a win con, things like that.
How does my team look? Yeah, how does my team look, basically? Yeah, like, do you think, look over my build for me? There's plenty of people.
There's so many people that would do that. And even once you, like we said earlier, once you start out and getting really close friends in the community, you start getting friends with people who are really, really close to you that are a little bit better than you, and you can start learning from them. Like, whenever I first got into Wi-Fi, one of the first people that I became friends with, it's been like a year now, which is nuts, but was Jacob. Jacob is always. And I started listening to what he had to say whenever he would talk about things. I'd be like, okay, can you look over my build, Jacob? Can you give me a tip on what I should use on my Incon? And then as I kept progressing and kept playing the format, he helped me get better. And there are people will help you get better. And iron sharpens iron. Like that's the best way I can say it.
Oh yeah. Again, don't be afraid to lose. Ask for help. But kind of coming to a close of this really long video. I don't even know how long it is. But there are a lot of different parts of things that make the draft league function. It's like one really big machine. You can't really have, you do one of these things and then expect to win. You have to kind of be conscious of all of them, whether it be battling, prepping, building, or even drafting in itself. Drafting in itself is really, really important and stuff like that. This is kind of just a basic, really, really basic intro to all like the core pieces and mechanics that kind of make up the draft league format and stuff like that. But if you want to really get better, the best advice I could give you is go out and play. Go out and find a league, play in some games, lose some games, win some games, figure out what works for you, what kind of player you are, mold your own play style and stuff like that, and kind of just jump headstrong into it. This I started playing draft maybe again, probably like a couple months after Sun Moon came out, and this has been like one of the biggest things in my life since then. I absolutely love playing draft. I've met so many amazing people. I've had so many amazing moments in it, and I really hope that this video can at least help a few of you potentially to kind of find what I found in this community and stuff like that.
You're a tear in my eye. What's happening?
Oh my gosh! I don't. Then we gotta stop then because I don't want that here. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out my buddy John if you haven't done so already, which I would be very surprised if you haven't done so already. But I'll link him in the description below, as well as all the relevant links to all the Discord servers and websites and everything like that that you need to know, kind of that we talked about. There should have been some information up on the screen throughout the video as well. Hopefully, if I did a decent job in this editing and stuff like that. But yeah, if you guys aren't subscribed to here as well, be sure to do so. There's going to be plenty of stuff coming up on the channel Gen 8. I have a lot of really, really big plans, and I'm hoping that Gen 8's going to be a blast. I'm really, really excited for Gen 8 draft. But yeah, do you have any closing words, Mr. John Jr.?
No, I think you covered everything amazingly.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. But yeah, with that being said, I think we're going to head out. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to get out of here. Later.